My wife and I were forced to achieve everything in our lives through our own efforts. We both grew up in low-income families, but what we lacked in money, we made up for in a strong work ethic. We knew the value of a hard day's work, and it was reflected in our marriage. We worked on it, unlike many couples with whom we met and communicated. Don't get me wrong, we're far from perfect, but so far there hasn't been anything we can't handle. That's what made this trip for our 10th anniversary even more special. This was the first real trip we've ever taken, including our honeymoon, which was in Niagara Falls. It was something exquisite, but we almost never left the room. We planned this trip 2 years ago and saved a little each month beyond our savings and future retirement funds. We learned early on that Diana couldn't have children, and it was hard to accept at first, but we learned to accept what we were given and decided to live our lives to the fullest. We may have come from humble beginnings, but my wife and I have invested a lot of time into staying healthy and fit. At 37 years old, my wife Diana was still a real beauty. I saw her that way, and judging by the amount of men's looks when she put on a swimsuit, many men agreed with me. Shoulder-length dark hair with natural curls that women could only dream of. Proportional but appropriate breasts, a flat tummy accentuated by her firm butt, all in a 5'7" frame. As for me, I am also well preserved. I may have started to get the popular dad bod, but I was still in shape. My dark hair already had some gray streaks in it, but my wife said it made me look more presentable, so I left it as is. I never made it to 6 feet. My height plateaued at 5'10" after high school, and I never grew an inch anymore. I couldn't grow a beard or mustache to keep my face always clean and shaven, which gave me a youthful appearance, constantly surprising people that I was almost 40 years old. It was our third evening at the resort, and after another full day of sun and rum, we dressed up and headed to one of the many clubs the resort had to offer. Diana loved to dance, and I loved watching her. She could catch the rhythm and completely master it. Her body made the slightest movement sexy, and her seductive gaze only added fire. More than once she was asked to dance by other men, but as usual, she politely refused. It has always been like this, and I learned not to be jealous a long time ago. I saw in her eyes that no man stood a chance. We had barely made it to our room when our clothes were quickly and hastily discarded. Our sex life has always been passionate. Tell me something you've never told me before. My wife's quiet voice broke the silence. Like what? I asked in surprise. I don't know. There must be something you've been hiding from me all these years. Something embarrassing. She laughed quietly. Do you have anything to confess? I joked. No, I was just hoping that I could learn something new about my man. You never know everything, right? I just thought I'd ask. I could see that there was a point to her motives. What about you? Do you have something so embarrassing that you've never told anyone? I kissed the top of her head. Her hand stopped for a second and then started moving again. Do you remember when I went for a Brazilian wax with Jenny? Jenny was one of her best friends. We didn't get along very well, but I tried for Diana's sake. I liked her husband, Peter. He was a great guy. I was upset for him when they divorced. As for Jenny, she always acted like she knew something about me. She made comments to me about how I wasn't a real man or something like that. I asked my wife more than once about Jenny's behavior, but she always insisted that it was just her character. Of course I remember, I laughed. She turned to me and had a huge smile on her face. You were insatiable, her eyes thought for a moment. I wonder, do they do Brazilian hair removal here? She giggled. I let out a soft growl. Save your money. Her smile became even wider. She then quickly buried her head into my chest. Remember how I told you how nervous I was when the beautician turned out to be a man? Jenny said he liked men, which was obvious, but it was still weird that a guy was doing my hair removal. I laughed, remembering. She was a little traumatized by this. Well, what I didn't tell you is that I was so nervous that I kept tensing the muscles down there and, oh God, it's so embarrassing. She started laughing. I was so tense when he leaned over to apply the wax. I farted. We both started laughing. Oh my God, She was already laughing hard. The poor guy almost fell out of his chair. I was in tears. It smelled so bad, she was completely losing control. We laughed for a long time at her confession. When we finally calmed down, she added one more detail. I'm so sick that he can't finish the job. They had to call another woman to finish. Our laughter returned. When we calmed down, I started looking for some embarrassing story that could be told, and the only thing that came to mind was something that might not be worth telling. Maybe it was all that rum, the afterglow effect, or the trust I had in my wife, but what came out of my mouth affected our relationship more than I could have imagined. I slept with a man, I blurted out. Her head lifted, and she stared into my eyes. Nonsense, you can't make things up. It must be true. When I didn't blink or argue, she glared at me even harder. Oh my God, you really did it. She sat up and slapped me on the chest. When? Who? She became all excited. I can't tell you this. It was a long time ago, before I met you. I don't want to go into details, honey. It's not something I like to think about. Come on, please. You can't just leave this without expecting me to ask for details. She gently caressed my breasts, making puppy dog eyes and sticking out her big plump lips. Okay, it was my senior year of college. Who was that? She asked quickly. No one you know. If I don't know him, why can't you tell me his name? She teased me. You're not going to back down, are you? She smiled and shook her head. His name was Anthony. I finally gave up. She looked like she was trying to remember the name. I hoped she wouldn't be able to match, but I should have known she'd figure it out with her pretty head. Her face lit up, and she slapped my chest. Anthony? Wasn't he your roommate? She could tell by the look in my eyes that she had hit the nail on the head. Wait, Anthony was black, wasn't he? I was surprised by her comment. So what? Honey, I didn't ask you any nasty details about your Brazilian fart. I didn't ask you what you ate or what it smelled like, right? Spicy taco salad appetizer, and it smelled like rotten asparagus. Now tell me. I've never seen Diana like this. She was like a pit bull grabbing a piece of meat, and part of me was starting to get annoyed. Diana, you make me feel really awkward. For the first time in my life, I'm starting to regret what I shared with you. Her mood instantly changed as my words knocked the wind out of her. I would never do that to you. I'm sorry I got so weird. She sobbed into my shoulder, and I finally felt my pulse slow. I rolled over and covered us with a thin cotton blanket. I love you for everything, Leo. You should know that. You make me feel amazing and loved. I wasn't someone who needed praise for my ego. I knew who I was. My wife never implied that I didn't measure up. As far as I knew, our sex life was incredible. Without saying a word, we fell asleep in each other's arms, waking up in the same position in the morning. I slowly got out, careful not to wake her, and headed to the bathroom to relieve myself and take a shower. About 10 minutes after the shower started, I felt her body slip behind me. I can't believe we're already on our 4th day in heaven. We are back to our holiday routine. Breakfast at the buffet and a long walk along the beach with mimosas in hand. We settled down by one of the pools well before noon, sunbathing and reading our books. You are one sexy man, Mr. Payne. Her voice was a little hoarse. Do you still think I'm a man after what I told you last night? I felt the need to find out how she was feeling the day after my confession. Her eyes widened and her seductive smile disappeared. I'm so sorry for the way I reacted, darling. Nothing can change my opinion of you. I love that you feel safe enough to share this with me. I just let my anxiety get the better of me. She kissed my nose. Excitement? What's got you so excited? I asked despite the ongoing worry in my head. The script. It was so unexpected. Her eyebrows twitched. Well, as long as I didn't make you feel uncomfortable. How can you find something sexy? How can it turn you on so much? I don't know. She shrugged. Maybe it's because you've never told anyone but me. It makes me feel special. Besides, wouldn't it thrill you if you knew that I like women too? She smiled. See, You'd think I'm less of a woman? Let's be honest. Society is more supportive of women who are together. The labels become derogatory and mean when it comes to two men. And I love you because, despite these marks, you feel comfortable enough to be free with me. It's not that different from, I'll go get some strong glasses of rum, my love. She quickly stood up. I quickly rolled over onto my stomach, watching her walk, swaying her hips and giggling. She caught me this time. I had to figure out how to take revenge, but for now I had to think about it. When my situation was finally resolved, I sat on the edge of the lounge and watched as my sexy wife returned with two large coconut bowls. I smiled at my happiness. All this beauty and sexuality is contained in a heart of gold. I was a happy man. My wife was intercepted by a large black guy in a white robe over dark swimming trunks. I watched them talk, and my wife threw her hair back and laughed with him. After a few minutes, he left, and she walked back to me. Making new friends, I see. I looked her over as she handed me my drink. What? This guy? He asked me where I got these drinks. She simply answered. Lots of laughing just for directions. I retorted. What? Oh, he said he was going to ask where I got my coconuts, but decided that was probably inappropriate. But he said it anyway. Interesting. Diana looked at me sternly. Don't you dare be jealous, Leo. I'm sorry for my behavior last night, but please don't insult me with petty jealousy. You have no reason. You know I would never do that. Her tone was stern, and I immediately knew I was a fool. My little ego took an unintentional blow last night, and I kept clinging to it. I watched as Diana rolled over onto her stomach, untied her bikini top, and turned away from me. I tried to return to my book, but I was ashamed of my behavior. I put the book down and drank a rum cocktail in large sips. I looked at Diana's cup and saw that it was almost untouched. I was going to offer her another drink, but clearly that wasn't an option for a relationship. Honey, I'll just go get another one of these drinks, okay? At best, I heard a mumbled response, so I stood up and headed towards the bar where she had taken them. On my way, I watched people all the time. This is what Diana and I did for fun. We weren't malicious, but it was amazing what you could learn just by observing people. Like right now. Off to the side, I saw the black guy Diana had encountered earlier. He rubbed the lotion over the other guy's back, who was clearly enjoying it. I chuckled. Naturally, the first guy I remarked to Diana about probably likes men. I shook my head and found a bar. I walked the long way back to our spot by the pool, watching couples and friends laughing and drinking. I was so happy that we could finally do it. I wish I could give my wife more trips like this. She deserves it. I came from the other side when finished his last drink. They were strong, so I already felt slightly intoxicated. I took the lotion. What? I scared her and giggled. You're turning a little pink, my dear. I'll just put some lotion on your back. She sighed with approval. I started telling her the details of my secret. What? Leo? Are you serious now? Why are you making fun of me if you don't want to talk about it? Maybe if you get me drunk, I'll tell you all the details. I watched as she reached for her coconut cup and couldn't drink through the straw fast enough. I need another one, honey. She held it and smiled. I guess it's your turn now. I went last time. It's not my fault you weren't ready for the addition. I tease her. Her face turned red. I can't. I shrugged, showing that it wasn't a problem for me. Please, I'll make it worth it for you. She smiled. What can I say? I'm weak in front of her beautiful face. I spanked her ass and took our empty cups back to the bar. By the time I returned, she was already sitting with a towel on her lap. Thought you couldn't move? I teased her. That was not easy. She stuck out her tongue. I handed her the rum drink, and we both drank it in one gulp after clicking our cups. Wow, this is stronger than the last one. Your drink is watered down with ice. It's been sitting there too long. You think if we drink enough of these drinks, I'll take your panties off? I winked. Oh, you don't have to get me drunk to do this. Your smile is the best way to take my panties off. So I gave her a huge smile, and she started laughing. We gathered our things and, with the towel still wrapped around my wife's waist, headed to the bar for another drink for our walk. We drank these drinks more slowly as we walked around the resort, eventually hitting the beach. Diana tried her best to get me to give details without being too pushy, and her puppy dog eyes were finally starting to break my resistance. We went to the beach bar for another drink and found a secluded place to sit. Honey, this is really hard for me to say. I don't feel ashamed anymore. I've learned to chalk it up to a crazy time, and I've forgiven myself. My real fear is how you'll take it and what it might do to our marriage. Baby, there is not a single word that could come out of your mouth that would ever make me doubt my heart or undermine my respect for you. What we have done and will do together only makes me love you more. You should know this, Leo. You're my lobster, she smiled, quoting Friends, and I chuckled. I looked out at the ocean and took a deep breath. I spent the next hour reminiscing about the last 4 months of college. Anthony and I met during our senior year and became roommates simply by chance. We hit it off immediately and had a lot in common. We loved the same sports, the same movies, the same music, and of course women. He often boasted that he got all the girls because he was black, and every time I accused him of lying. One evening we returned from a student party, both drunk and without women. I congratulated him on his black man abilities, and he told me to go to hell. It was all in jest, and we fell on the sofa at the same time. Do you know why I have so many girls, Leroy? That's what he called me when he wanted to make me angry. Money? I laughed. Unfazed, he shook his head. No, this is my manhood. Girls can't resist it. I laughed so hard that I fell off the couch onto the floor. Dude, I'm serious. Someone has an ego here. I mimicked him, laughing. Then this happened. We didn't talk about it for several weeks until one day he brought it up himself. We discussed the usual things like, is everything okay? Are there any hard feelings? Eventually, it turned out that he wanted to try again if I didn't mind. Being drunk kind of stole some of the fun, he said. To my surprise, I agreed. This was the second time of many. It never interfered with our dating or friendship. When we graduated, we parted on a good note. We will forever remain friends, and what we shared will be our forever secret. I finished my story, afraid to see what my beloved wife was now thinking about her husband. She didn't say a word the whole time. Finally, I gathered my courage and looked at her face. There was no condemnation in her gaze. I saw that there was still love in her eyes. In fact, they were wet, as if from tears. Well, now you know, I mumbled, embarrassed. She threw herself into my lap, throwing her arms around my neck and snuggling. You're so amazing, she smiled. Why? I tried to joke, but she didn't allow it. Because you shared something so deep and personal, with me. She began to cry. Your openness makes me feel so close to you. I'm honored that you shared this with me. She could tell I was about to say something sarcastic, so she quickly interrupted me. Believe me when I say that my respect for you has only increased. I never thought I could love you more, but now I do. We need to get back to our room now. We practically ran back to our room. I leaned over her body. What's gotten into you? I smiled at her red face. What? A woman can't relax with her husband? She teased me back. You can lose control whenever you want, my sexy wife. She started laughing in my face. Oh my God, that was so cheesy. She continued to laugh despite my attempt to look offended. Come on, I'm starving, and we both need a shower before we go anywhere. Reluctantly, I rolled over and she pulled me into the shower. Dinner was quiet. We only had 3 days left, and we wanted time to slow down as much as possible. We decided that the club wasn't for us tonight, so after walking around the grounds, we chose a cozy table in a quiet piano bar, snuggled together, and sipped drinks. The black man we had seen earlier in the day walked in with his friend and casually walked past our table. He and my wife made eye contact. He smiled widely and walked towards us. I am disappointed, he said. I liked your coconuts. He laughed deeply, and we all smiled. Why are the darlings always married? He turned to his friend. Happily married, I might add. I offered. I knew he probably liked men, but I still felt the need to mark my territory, if you know what I mean. Oh, my good man. His smile grew even wider. I wasn't talking about your wife. There was a short silence before my wife spat out her drink and started laughing. I didn't understand at first, but when I did, my face turned red with embarrassment. The big man started laughing and my wife pointed at my red face. He came up to me and extended his hand. Harrison Dubois, this is my partner Franco Benoit. Sorry to bother you. You seem like funny people. I shook the man's hand and couldn't help but notice how much smaller my hand was than his. He can be so embarrassed sometimes. Franco clapped the big man on the shoulder. Let's leave these two lovers and find ourselves a table, you big fool. We both smiled and waved as they headed to another empty table. Still think he was trying to get into my swim trunks? Diana smiled from ear to ear. After 3 or 4 quiet drinks, we left the establishment and decided to take a walk around the resort before going to bed. The place was so big and beautiful that walking was also exercise and rest. The people, the staff, even the workers were always friendly. Diana clung to my right side, wrapping her arm around mine. We stopped at a small lookout point and could see a huge bonfire on the beach. Music was playing, people were dancing and singing. It was a real paradise. Honey, can I ask you something? Her soft voice cut through the silence around us. I turned and smiled. I knew she wasn't just asking. This is quite personal, and you have to promise that you will keep an open mind and not get angry. Can you do that, honey? Damn, the last time you came to me with a question like that, it didn't end well. I was joking, but I think it ended up working out well. I underlined the last 3 words. God, you really need to improve your jokes, honey. Come on, that was funny. I answered in defense. Her face became serious, and I stopped. Okay, you have my promise. Ask. It's about Anthony. It really bothered me. I think my face looked panicked at her choice of words as she quickly explained herself. Oh, honey, in a good way. You saw how I reacted after you told me about it. Her face turned red with embarrassment. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop wishing I was there to see it. Why? That's all I could say. I don't know. Maybe it's taboo or the interracial aspect. She looked into my eyes. Maybe even submission. You have a strong character, my dear, and to know that you felt the desire to do this and even enjoyed it. Well, I can't stop thinking about it. What are you getting at, Diana? She knew I was on the verge of irritation. Using her name instead of a term of endearment was a clear sign. Honey, you promised you wouldn't get mad. She stroked my hand. I was on the verge of pulling back her hand, but I promised. Would you ever be open to doing that again? In front of me, her voice shook with nerves. Crap. It just came out. Isn't it enough that you made me your bitch? Do you want me to humiliate myself not only in front of you, but also in front of another man? Let me guess. Do you have a friend at work or an acquaintance whom you would like to see with me? What? No, Leo. I'm asking as your wife, who loves you deeply, who loves our little sex games. Our bedroom is our safe place, honey. Remember, and you're not my bitch. If I force you to feel uncomfortable, I hope you tell me. Deciding to focus on just one problem, I continued. Explain to me how it's safe. Now we have to worry about him talking after that. Our sex games work because they're just between you and me. Seriously, what are you thinking, Diana? We could do it here, she quickly suggested. We're in fucking Jamaica. We don't know anyone here. We haven't made any friends. What happens here stays here. But it'll be another exciting secret we'll share together. I was at a loss. I wish I had told her about this. I kept it a secret for so long for a reason. Why does she want to see this so insistently now? On our next trip, you might see me with another woman. How do you like that? It'll be fair. I shook my head at her illusory thinking. Of course, dear. It took us 10 years to get here, so we'll be equal through what? More 10 years? It really seems fair. Okay, I'll do it at home. I'll take the risk of it getting out. You choose the time and place, and I'll do it for you. What makes you think I even want to see? Oh, come on. All men want to see this. She smiled at me. This unsettled me. I could be angry or disappointed, and then she would say something sweet or funny, and it would throw me off. She was good at it, and she knew it. I leaned my elbows on the fence and dropped my head. Why? Why did she need to bring this up? Why did I even open my mouth? I kept this a secret for so many years for a reason. I'm sorry, honey. We promised years ago to be honest and bring healthy ideas into our bedroom. I know it's a big ask. Just think about it, okay? I promise, if you decide it's not possible, I'll respect that and I will never raise this issue again. She kissed my cheek. But promise me you'll think about it, okay? I finally stood up and took a deep breath. We silently returned to our room. Any thoughts about sex tonight were excluded. I was too confused and upset. She was right. We did promise to be honest for the sake of a healthy bedroom. I just didn't know if it fit into our original pact. The silence continued in our room, and we crawled under the covers. I looked at the ceiling, and my wife curled up under my arm for a hug. I wanted to sleep so bad, but I knew that this night would be long for me and my brain. I love you, Leo, she whispered. I know it's a meaningless statement, but please don't think too much about it. There is no winning or losing. This is not the deciding factor. No matter what you decide, you will always be the only man for me. I thought about her words, but could not find what to answer. I tried to say something, but before I could find the right words, she fell asleep next to me. Well, at least one of us got to sleep that night. I would say I woke up before Diana, but in reality I barely slept. I stepped into the shower, hoping that the water running over my head would help calm my racing thoughts. Most people would expect me to reject my wife's proposal. I thought so too. But as the night went on, I began to consider it. It wasn't that I couldn't refuse my wife something. I've done it in the past. It was more about why I would say no. Deep down, I had to admit that part of me was intrigued. I remember how hesitant I was about her crazy ideas earlier, but now it's a wonderful part of our sex games. And then, her reaction to my confession. Her argument about us being on vacation and no one knows us. Damn. Her logic made sense. In the end, it was all about me. Do I want to be with a man again, and can I do it in front of my wife? What are you thinking about? Her soft voice let me know that she had quietly entered the shower. I was so absorbed in thoughts that I didn't even hear her. Did you sleep? No, not really, I answered honestly. I'm sorry, honey. Really? Seriously, I laughed. She hugged me tighter. Yes, the last thing I wanted to do was stress you out on our only vacation together. I'm terribly sorry. If. I started, and that's a big if. I shook my head at the absurdity of it all. If that's what you do for me, I'll choose the candidate carefully. I'll be able to tell if he's a hidden scumbag or a player better than you. With the time we have left, that probably won't happen. I don't want to rush anything, which we will regret later. Her sensible approach really made me feel better. She wasn't so passionate that she didn't realize the risks. The fact that you're considering this says a lot, honey. Your love for me never ceases to amaze me. I'm the luckiest woman on the planet. Believe it or not, that's where it ended. We said no more about it, and after we got dressed, we went for a morning walk and then breakfast. We only had 2 evenings left, and we planned to make the most of it. We spent the day at the beach. Diana read a lot while I involuntarily caught up on a missed dream. My sweet wife woke me up from time to turn around so as not to get burned on one side and ruin my last days. Dinner was at one of the special restaurants, and it was very romantic. We were dressed in more formal attire to suit the atmosphere. After our final post-dinner drinks, we planned to go to one of the trendier clubs. I waited outside while Diana went into the ladies' room. I know women shouldn't be rushed, but it seemed like she was staying longer than usual. There was probably a line or something like that. Finally, I saw her come out and realized that something had happened. When you live with someone for a long time, you learn to notice the slightest changes in their voice and behavior. Now my wife walked with determination, and her smile was dangerous. It must have been some kind of special toilet experience. You look like you're ready to take on the world. She kissed me on the cheek and pulled me down the path. Her energy literally radiated from her body. I felt there was some kind of story behind it. Okay, tell me, I said. What do you mean, Leo? Oh, please. I know you well enough to know you've got something brewing in that sexy little head of yours. So tell me already, you're literally vibrating. After a little laughter, she took me aside to a bench and we sat down. Okay, listen to me. I rolled my eyes and she slapped me on the shoulder. Leo Kingsley Payne, stop that attitude. She playfully won me over. What if I told you that I may have found the perfect candidate? The ideal candidate? I thought this matter was already closed, dear. Well, we talked about it and agreed that it would be difficult to organize everything on such short notice. She looked into my eyes. But other than that, you've been thinking about it, haven't you? I don't want to make any assumptions, but you asked how it could work, so. You've thought about it, right? My eyes dropped down, and strangely enough, my gaze fell on the wedding ring on my left hand. I don't know, honey. To be honest, I was relieved when I thought the matter was closed. We sat in silence for some time. Neither of us knew what to say. How can you be sure that you have found a good candidate? You met him in the toilet. This all seems strange, Diana. I literally ran into someone as I was coming out of the restroom. She tried to meet my eyes, but I avoided her hypnotic gaze. We've already met him a couple of times, here at the resort. I immediately understood who she was talking about. I stared at her. Harrison, that huge black guy? Of course it's going to be a huge black guy. Damn it, Diana. I pushed her away and stood up. I debated whether to leave, but my wife's laughter froze me in place. Something funny, honey, I glanced at her. Honey, listen to yourself. Do you really think that I planned all of this? We just found out yesterday that you might be interested, but the dynamics of how to do it were almost impossible. She stood up and hugged me. Think about it. I've met him a few times. He seems like a nice person. He and his partner already think you're cute. He obviously likes men, so he wouldn't mind if another man did it. Well, you get the idea. She smiled. And besides, we'll never see him again. This whole thing was beyond my control. I didn't even choose his color, honey. It had nothing to do with me. She kissed me tenderly. And then, she started. You can refuse, and I will never hold it against you. I already promised to drop the idea if that's what you want. You call that leaving? I teased her. Hey, I had one last chance. I tried. Judge me. Her smile was contagious. We slowly walked on, and she hugged me even tighter. Do you want to hear what happened? She asked, as if leaving it in the air. She was waiting for me to admit it one way or another. Okay, what did you tell him? In fact, after we apologized to each other, he asked where my better half was. I joked that he shouldn't make plans, and he laughed, saying he wasn't trying to ruin a good marriage. At that moment, I decided to take a chance. Without all the details, I told him that you and I love experiments. You should have seen his face, honey. He was half surprised, half intrigued. I could see his wheels starting to turn. Am I offering him this? And I replied that yes, if it's not against his partner. He grinned and said that they were both quite free in their relationship. In general, he gave me his room number and said that we could. Come in and discuss it if you're really interested. Tonight, I probably sounded nervous. Well, that's not necessary. She hugged me tighter. But I know you. If you put it off until tomorrow, you'll worry all night and the next day. You'll ruin the rest of your vacation. And if I say no, we'll go back to our room. I laughed at her words. You'd be a terrible salesperson, Diana. I guess, but I'm not trying to sell you anything, honey. You know how I feel about this. Do I want to see it? You know I do. But I'm also happy if this opportunity passes by, if it puts stress on you or our relationship. We walked in silence for some time. I mentally digested all the events of the last day and a half. Ultimately, the decision was mine. Everything literally coincided. The script was the best option we would ever have. I knew that Diana would remember this fondly for the rest of her life. And suddenly, there was a large part of me that began to accept it. "Where is his room?" It shouldn't have been a whisper, but I spoke quietly. She stopped me in my tracks and looked at me. "Really? Are you sure, honey? You're not just doing this for me." I laughed. "I'm 100% doing this for you." Her smile faded a little. "Diana, I will never be able to love someone the way I love you. What we have is extraordinary. Our marriage is successful because we listen to each other and sometimes expose ourselves to what may not be our ideal situation, but most often we like it because it will make someone else happy." Her eyes filled with tears from my sincere words. "But, are you sure? Ask me again, and I'll probably change my mind." She grabbed my hand and began to drag me towards residential buildings. "Can we stop at a bar on the way? I need a little drink for courage." I was serious. 30 minutes later, and after 2 very strong glasses of rum, we stood in front of the door with the number. Diana looked at me as if asking permission, so I nodded and she knocked on the door. It seemed like an eternity, but I'm sure it was less than 30 seconds when the door opened. Behind the door stood a huge Harrison in a robe with the resort logo. His smile was sincere and wide. "Come in." He stepped back and let us inside. Good timing. Franco just left for the club. We stopped in his room and turned to face him. "Honestly, I didn't think you'd come." "We almost didn't come," I said with little conviction. "Leo, right?" I nodded. "This doesn't have to be awkward, Leo. Honestly, I've been in similar situations before. I just hope you're here of your own free will and not you give in to blackmail." I looked at Diana and her face turned red. I looked at Harrison again. "No, I wasn't blackmailed, but my beautiful wife can be very persistent and persuasive." This caused the big man to laugh loudly. "I understand you, brother. Would you like a drink? I have Appleton rum." We both nodded, and he pulled out 3 glasses, filled them with ice, and poured generous amounts of rum. "I hope you don't mind, but I never use a mixer. I like the ice to melt and soften the sting a little." "It's okay, Harrison. Thank you." My wife was grateful for both of us. She sat down in the high back of the chair, and I remained standing. Harrison moved towards the bed and sat down. His robe fell open, and my wife clearly saw what he had underneath. Her face turned bright red, and she looked at me with the biggest eyes I've ever seen. She immediately took a sip of rum and tried not to look there anymore. "It's going to get really awkward if we play a game of who goes first. So." Harrison stood up with a glass of rum and opened his robe. "It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, I guess. What do you say, Leo?" I took one last look at my wife. I needed to see her face to make sure everything was okay. I saw that she felt a little awkward, but her eyes radiated love. I drank my entire glass in one gulp. Then I did what my wife asked me to do. After that, he started making fun of me. Without any hesitation, I hit him, stood up, and walked out the door to the screams of my wife. I was almost at the stairs when I heard her apologize to the bastard and run after me. "Leo, Leo, wait!" I heard her heels clicking on the stairs and then on the ground when she caught up with me and pulled my hand. "What were you thinking? He might arrest you." These are not the words I wanted to hear from my wife. "Get away! Leave me alone!" I pulled my hand out of her grip and continued walking. "Leo, please, Leo, don't do this. What can I do?" she screamed, but I ignored her and continued walking. I walked in the shadows as the darkness seemed appropriate. Part of me wanted to stop and sit up, but the energy coursing through my body wouldn't allow it. Finally, I found the courage to stop at the beach bar. I went to the side without customers and waited for the bartender. "What do you want?" He fell silent mid-sentence. At first I was surprised by his reaction, But then I realized what I probably looked like. Rum, please. No ice, no mix. Yes, of course, friend. He turned to the alcohol in the center and poured a full glass. Here, looks like you need this. I took the glass and nodded at his observation. I tipped the glass and drank it all in one gulp. The burning was almost unbearable, but it was better than the taste I had in my mouth. When I finally finished, I placed the glass on the bar. The poor guy was lost for words, so I just thanked him and continued on my way. I reached the farthest end of the beach and turned towards the ocean. Without any thought, I walked into the waves until the water reached my chest, and then I simply fell into the stream. I didn't think about suicide, but I did think how easy it would be to just take a sip of ocean water and let it do its thing. But before I got to that point, I forced myself out of the water, tore off my shirt, and began rubbing my face and hair, trying to get rid of the remnants of the nightmare. When I finished, I slowly walked back to the shore and sat down by the rocks. I grabbed my knees and dropped my head on them, wondering how I could recover from this. It was probably the most honest conversation I've ever had with myself. There were so many regrets I needed to deal with, and I didn't know where to start. Despite my anger at Diana, I realized that she was an easy target for my emotional breakdown. Yes, I agreed, for the sake of her happiness, but it's my fault. I stood my ground before, and she even clearly said that I could refuse. Harrison, that arrogant bastard, didn't help. His last comment hit the nail on the head, and I went too far. Diana was right, I could have been arrested for this, and who knows what the legal system is like here. I found myself between a rock and a hard place. I looked around and grinned. In fact, I was between a rock and a tree, but the metaphor still works. It was already well after midnight when I was found standing at the door of our room. I lost the key somewhere in the ocean, so there's no way to enter quietly. I knocked quietly 3 times and waited for my life to go downhill. A few seconds later, the door swung open, and I saw my wife's tired, worried face. "Leo," she screamed and threw her arms around me. "I was so worried, I couldn't find you." She cried on my neck. I was so immersed in my own world that I didn't even think about how Diana would feel about my sudden disappearance. I hugged her and slowly pushed us inside the room to close the door. I felt her body shake as she cried in my arms. Finally, I convinced her to let me go, but she still held my hand and sat us down on the bed. "Where did you go? I looked for you everywhere. I was about to call security so they could find you. Are you okay?" She asked a lot of questions. I needed time alone. Sorry for making you worry. Her eyes noticed my lack of shirt and ruined clothes. "What happened to you?" "I went for a swim." I smiled slightly at her. "Swim? Are you fucking kidding me?" I felt dirty and disgusting, Diana. I needed to do something to wash away the memory. She looked at me guiltily. "Honey, I'm so sorry. I should never have insisted on this. I put my hand over her mouth. "You gave me every opportunity not to do this. I decided to do this. For your sake. Whatever happened to me, it was my fault, and I don't want you to take responsibility for it." "About that, I went back to Harrison's room in case you were back there. I've never seen you so angry. I don't think I've ever seen you hit a person." She shook her head. "So, I came back and apologized for my part in it. He wasn't mad." I looked at her in surprise. Oh, don't get me wrong, he was furious about his nose, but he felt partly responsible. He admitted that he had been too flippant about the whole situation. It turns out he had done this before, with other married couples, but husbands were always not against it. He mistakenly assumed that you belonged to this category. Believe it or not, he apologized to me and asked me to convey this to you too. I must say, I did not expect this. "I'm really tired, honey. I just want to take a shower and go to bed." She got up with me and went to the bathroom. "I'll be fine, honey." "Perhaps, but I need to be with you." Her eyes made it clear that there was no room for discussion. "There will be no morning walk today." We lay in bed until lunch. By then, our stomachs had signaled that it was time to move. After lunch, we found a spot by one of the pools where Diana was reading, and I was lost in thought, too preoccupied to read. Twice Diana wanted to go for a walk, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I convinced her to go without me, but she did not agree. Talk to me, honey. You're all wrapped up in yourself. You look like you're thousands of miles away. I turned to her beautiful face and saw concern in her eyes. Do you think less of me? As a man? What? God, no. She moved closer. Please don't say that. I'm so sorry that I ever asked you to do anything for me that was incredibly selfish. Did you like it? Before my breakdown, I mean. I saw her trying to formulate a cautious answer. Diana, what's done is done. What I need now is honesty. She was still thinking about her words. As an act of sex? Yes. She watched my reaction very carefully. But dear, if I had known that this would cause you so much agony, I would never have asked. The fact that you now doubt your masculinity and your shaken confidence is like a knife in my heart. I hope that one day I can make it all go away, darling. You must know that the only thing that has changed for me is that I love you even more deeply, and I never thought that was possible. Her eyes were connected to my soul, and her sincere words brought me relief. I felt some of the weight lift from my shoulders. I smiled at her slightly, and she smiled back. She stood up and tried to lift me up with her. Honey, I don't want to go out. She continued to pull, but harder. We're not going out. We're going to our room. Her comment caught me off guard, and with that, she was able to lift me up. I'm sure people saw her almost dragging me away from the pool, but no one seemed bothered since I didn't put up much of a fight. Once in our room, I stood at the edge of the bed with my hands on my hips. Diana, this is stupid. That day, I regained my confidence. With the help of my loving wife, I began the process of forgiving myself and realizing that my self-deprecation would only punish our marriage. The last full day and evening were amazing, and it was hard to leave. Speaking of breakups, we met Harrison and Franco in the lobby when we checked out. Despite the dirty look I received from Franco, Harrison was polite and didn't blame me for the 2 black eyes I gave him. Saying goodbye to him on good terms also helped my process. We sat on the plane, reminiscing about the long-awaited trip and how amazing it was. The hardest part was realizing that the next day we would have to return to the hustle and bustle of everyday life. The only hope was that we wouldn't have to wait another 10 years to do it again. Wasn't this a happy ending? Initially, of course, yes. We are back to our lives, more connected than before. But the daily hustle and bustle of life, work and marriage, has a way of taking the shine off anyone. At no point did I feel that our marriage was in danger. We're just back to normal, that's all. Our trip was 4 months ago, and we were in town with Jenny. Yes, Jenny. Actually, they were having fun, and I was the designated driver and coordinator. Of course, Diana and I loved to drink, but whenever she and Jenny got together, they attracted a lot of unwanted attention with their dancing and behavior. This wasn't the first time I'd spent time with them like this, but it was becoming increasingly difficult for me to tolerate Jenny. Her attitude towards me has only worsened since our trip. Of course, whenever I talked to my wife about it, I got the famous, "That's just the way she is." Pablo's was one of the clubs we visited several times a year, and today my wife and Jenny outdid themselves. They got more than their share of attention from the men at the bar. I was returning from the bar with drinks for the girls when I noticed a couple of guys chatting with them at our table. Diana gestured to me, and they both turned to me. I sat down and pushed the girls' drinks. "Thank you, darling." Diana leaned over and kissed me. "These nice men wanted us to dance, but your wife is a bore." Jenny moaned. I shrugged. I never stopped her from dancing with others. It was her own decision. "I told you to go dance. I need to sit for a while and hold my man." Diana sang. Jenny put her finger in her mouth and pretended to be sick. She then turned to the 2 black men who were still standing there. "Sorry, guys. She's my partner, so if she doesn't participate, I'll miss out too." Her words did not match her actions because, as it seemed to me, everyone saw how she glanced at the fly of one of the men and smiled. Both politely accepted the refusal and left. Jenny put on quite a show, waving her arms like she was hot. God, I grinned, knowing that Jenny was a girl of easy virtue. I saw Diana smile through her straw as she drank her drink. I don't think even Leo could handle a guy like that. Diana spat out what she had just drunk. I looked at Jenny, who was trying not to laugh. When Diana came to her senses, I saw that she was also trying not to laugh. That was until she saw that I was looking at her with hatred. Without saying a word, I pushed the table away and headed towards the exit. Leo, wait. I was halfway to the parking lot when Diana caught up with me. She stood in front of me, forcing me to stop. Honey, this isn't. Don't call me fucking darling, Diana. You told her about what happened in Jamaica. How? I was so stunned that I could hardly find the words. Why? Why did you do this to me, to us? Leo, it's not that big of a deal. You're making it bigger than it really is. Do you hear yourself? What nonsense are you talking about? What happened to the sacredness and privacy of our bedroom, Diana? It was our safe place. You told me over and over again that... Oh God, it dawned on me. All Jenny's sarcastic remarks about my questionable masculinity. She knows about our games, doesn't she? Oh my God, what an idiot I am. Of course she does. She's held it over me all these years. Leo, I can explain. I crossed my arms and stared at her. Come on, I know how it happened, but explain to me why you needed to make a laughing stock of me in front of your so-called best friend. What, Leo? I didn't do anything like that. Really? She knows everything. It was probably her idea, damn perfection. Honey, no, she didn't. I interrupted her. No doubt about it, you told her everything. You had to spill the beans about what I did in Jamaica. For you, for her, of all people, you told that damn bitch. I'm sure you both enjoyed laughing at my back, calling me all possible names. Let's laugh at him. No, no, no. Tears flowed freely, but I didn't believe a single word she said. I just shared how special our relationship was and how happy I was. So, romance, dinners, helping around the house, supporting your career, planning your life around you. You couldn't tell me about it. It wasn't special. You had to tell the biggest idiot in town who couldn't. I'd better keep my mouth shut, that I'm special. She had nothing to say. Her shoulders shook as she tried to control her sobs. I took my wallet out of my pocket, fished out $100 bill, and stuck it in her cleavage. It's for a taxi or more drinks, whichever you prefer. You can go back inside and rub yourself against real men all you want, and I'm leaving. I walked past her. Leo, please, let me explain. I turned around, releasing everything that had accumulated inside. You laughed, Diana. You laughed at my expense. Congratulations. You destroyed my ego, my confidence, and our marriage, all for a laugh. I hope it was worth it. I walked towards the car, ignoring all her pleas to come back. I needed to leave, but where could I go? I heard the tires squeal as Leo drove away. What have I done? In his own words, I just ruined the love of my life. It started to drizzle, which matched my current emotional state. How could I ruin everything like that? My life was perfect. I slowly walked back to the bar. I needed to get home, but my purse was inside, and I needed to get it. Will he even go home? My sobs intensified at this thought. By the time I got to the table, I was in a terrible state. Jenny waited anxiously for me and helped me sit down. I have to go. I have to talk to him. I was shaking violently, and Jenny sat me down. Darling, you need to sit down. You're barely hanging on. He'll be there when you get there. No, I have to go. I have to fix this. And you will, dear. But maybe you should give him some time to cool off. He's probably really angry right now. Can you blame him? Well, I think he overacted a little, but I guess his ego is pretty fragile. I looked sharply at my best friend. Overacted? Jenny, he's devastated. How can you say that? And why did you make that comment? You know me. I get chatty when I drink. I didn't mean anything bad. Jenny, be honest with me. Have you ever told anyone else about this? I mean anyone? No, I would never do that to you, Dee. I looked at her intently, and she made some sort of word of honor gesture. I tried to get up again. I have to go. I need to see him. I can't believe I did this to him. Di, sit down. Give him time. You need to come up with a plan yourself. What will you say and all that? He will attack you with pistols drawn. You need to be prepared. Jenny was right. I needed to think about what to say. I had to put it in a way that made him understand how much I loved him, how much I needed him. If this was the right approach, why did I feel like I was going to throw up? 2 hours later, I walked out of the bar and left Jenny to fend for herself. She offered to come with me, but her presence would only increase Leo's anger. The house was dark when my Uber pulled into the driveway. Looks like Leo didn't come home. I went inside and walked around the house, turning on the lights. The living room and kitchen looked untouched. No water in the sink or food in sight. I walked down the hallway, passing 2 other bedrooms and a bathroom. At first glance, they looked unused. The door to the master bedroom was ajar, but we always left it open since it was just the 2 of us. I went inside and looked around the room for something, but saw no sign that Leo was here. I thought this would calm me down, but instead I began to worry that something had happened to him. He left so angry. What if he had an accident? Could he hurt himself? Oh God, no. My thoughts overwhelmed me with terrible scenes. I called him again, but the voice mailbox went again. I left several messages, but he clearly didn't want to talk to me. I sat on his side of the bed. In some strange way, it made me feel closer to him. My gaze slid over his bedside table and the floor. His bag. He always leaves his gym bag on the floor near the nightstand, but it wasn't there. I stood up and looked around, but she was nowhere to be found. Instinctively, I opened his chest of drawers. Shirts and underwear were roughly piled on top of each other. Fast packing signs. I turned on my heel and ran to the closet. Several trousers were missing and clothes were strewn on the floor. Oh my God, I covered my mouth with my hand. The wave of nausea was almost unbearable. I ran out of the room to the bathroom and barely had time to reach the toilet when I started vomiting. My tears and vomit mixed into a painful cocktail. When it finally stopped, I lowered my head onto my outstretched arms and started crying again. Exhausted by my emotions, I stood up and turned on the tap to rinse my mouth when I saw this. A small note was taped to the mirror. With shaking hands, I removed the paper from the mirror and opened it. Diana, I need to be alone. I don't know when I'll be back. Don't call me. I'll call you myself. I honestly don't know how to come back from this. I don't have words to express how I feel. I know you'll be worried. Calm down. I'm not planning to do anything stupid. Stupid is just me. I collapsed on the floor and cried until I lost consciousness. The next morning, I felt absolutely terrible. I was in a dark place emotionally, and physically I wasn't feeling well either. Not only did I get some sleep, it was night sweats and anxiety. Despite his request not to contact him, I did the exact opposite. I sent over 50 text messages and left about 10 more long voicemails, but all I got back was silence. I was drinking my already cold coffee when my phone rang. I jumped up, excited to talk to Leo, but when I picked up the phone, I saw Jenny's name on the screen. I wasn't going to answer, but I figured she might be concerned about me. Hello? Dee, how are you, honey? Have you sorted everything out with Mr. Playwright? I was so shocked by her indifference that I could not answer. Di, are you there? He left. Finally, I was able to say a word. What? Left as in, went for a walk, or left as in moved? He left me. Why didn't you call me? Sorry, I was too busy throwing up to dial your number. Why didn't you call me Jenny? You saw my marriage falling apart last night and didn't even think to check on me. I didn't think it was that bad. I just assumed he went home to wine. Damn. I'll get dressed and be at your place soon, okay? I muttered something in response and hung up. I was in two states. On the one hand, it would be nice to have someone around, but on the other hand, all this happened because of her and her big mouth. Either way, I used the distraction to force myself to take a shower. As the shower ran, I reflected on my anger at Jenny. It's true, she should have checked on me last night. I know if the roles were reversed, I would check on her. As for her big mouth, that's also true. However, I should never have shared the most intimate secrets of our bedroom with her. Why did I do this? I was absolutely sure that Leo would never share our intimate details. I considered myself in the same category because why would I worry about Jenny spilling the beans? Cheating my devotion made me feel sick. I was wearing old sweatpants and a sweatshirt when I heard a knock on the door. I hadn't dried my hair, let alone conditioned it, and judging by Jenny's sympathetic look, my guess that I looked like a wet rat was confirmed. Oh, poor thing. Let's go have some coffee and sit in the kitchen. Jenny took me into the kitchen and sat me down while she made us coffee. Now tell me everything that happened after you left. I carefully recounted the conversation Leo and I had in the parking lot, what I found when I got home. Vomit and, of course, a note. I handed her the note and watched as she read it. I looked for a reaction, but she seemed much calmer than me. Oh, honey, it's okay. His ego is a little bruised, but he'll understand. He's crazy about you, Dee, and knows he couldn't do better. Give him a few days. I'm sure he'll come back with his tail between his legs. I was both shocked and annoyed by her flippant attitude. She talked about Leo like he was some kind of weakling. Jenny, I really don't think you understand the pain I caused him. She just looked at me as if my words were immature. After taking a few sips from her cup, she looked at me. Have you ever thought, Diana, that this might be the perfect opportunity for you? Opportunity? Jenny, what are you talking about? Dee, I don't think you realize how lucky you are to be in this situation. Many women would kill for the opportunity you have. My mouth seemed to open and close several times like a fish on shore, but I didn't understand why. Why would any woman want to be in my situation? Jenny stood up with her coffee, leaned against the counter, and took a few more sips before putting the cup down. Okay, I want you to listen to me very carefully. She leaned her palms towards the counter. Leo doesn't just love you, he defies you. The sun rises and sets for you, my dear. I tried to say something, but she stopped me. Just listen to me, okay? Di, don't you see what you have? He told you his secret. Then, on your 10th birthday, he gave in to your request to see him do it. She paused to let it sink in before me. Honey, Leo is the perfect candidate. Think about it. He submits to you in bed, willing to fulfill your requests for things that no normal guy would agree to. You can have it all. Have your cake and eat it too. You could have sex with whoever you want, whenever you want. You saw how those two guys made love to us. We could spend the whole night. Of course, his little ego will be hurt, and he will pretend that he won't allow it, but you just keep telling him that it is, and soon he will not only agree, but will accept it as the norm. You will have such amazing sex. Oh God, Dee, think of the power you will have. We'll do everything to make you happy, and a sex life that will make you high. She came to me and leaned closer to my face. You, my dear, have the opportunity of a lifetime. Think about it. I'm sure she could tell I was only thinking about it. I was completely speechless. How did Jenny come up with all this? It was like she was slowly trying to push me in this direction. And then it hit me hard. I actually made Leo like this. I took his trust and shared it with Jenny, who had held it over him all these years like a hidden force. I looked into her devilish eyes, and her smirk made me go wild. You damn bitch! I jumped out of my chair and hit her. You ambushed me. You ambushed Leo. I will kill you. You damn bitch. All my anger, all my disappointment, all my fear was connected with this woman, and I wanted to kill her. Jesus, Dee, relax. Let's talk about this. She moved to the other side of the dining table. I looked at her through my wet, disheveled hair. I thought you were my friend. Leo knew who you were. I never listened to him. I stood up for you. And this is how you pay me back. Remember, darling, You are the one who revealed all the details to me. She answered, because you always wanted to know. You want to know why I was so stupid to share these things with you? I wanted to show you that Leo is real. You're right. He adores me, and in my eyes, it's not submission, it's love. He always puts me first. But that doesn't mean he's a weakling. He fought back when things couldn't satisfy him, and even then it was about boundaries, expectations, and respect. I started to find a rhythm again. The confusion in my head disappeared. Jenny's attempt to turn it around was over. My Leo is always the man. He works hard, plays hard, fixes cars, cooks me dinner, does my laundry, takes care of the house, and owns me in the bedroom. Everything we do begins and ends with him. He has all the power, Jenny, but instead of abusing it, he allows me my moments to satisfy my whims, and do you know why he does this? Because he trusts and respects me, at least before. My voice weakened. When we found out that I couldn't have children, he didn't hesitate for a second. He dreamed of being a father and would be the best father for a child, but he let go of that dream. His life was there for me, no matter what. That's what he told me, Jenny. He's a real man by any standards, not for you, you fucking horny, selfish bitch. I won a long time ago, whatever this argument was. I saw the expression on Jenny's face, but it wasn't enough. She destroyed my marriage with one selfish attack. I was going to take my share of the flesh. Tell me, Jenny, why did Peter really leave? It's best to tell the truth. I guarantee I'll look for him. I never gave him a chance to explain himself when he left. I believed you when you said you caught him cheating. I didn't even give him a chance to explain. I slapped myself on the head in realization. Jesus, even Leo said you shouldn't judge until you know both sides. I forbade him from getting involved because I thought it was an insult to our friendship. Oh God, you've been playing with me all these years. All Jenny's impudence was gone. She was now sitting timidly at the kitchen table. She couldn't even look me in the eyes. That's when I saw her wiping a tear from a bruise on her eye. I thought Peter would just play along. We were playing role-playing games about being with another man. He accepted my fantasies, giving me what I needed to play. But that wasn't enough, so I told him I was going to bring another man into the game. An alpha male. At first he was upset, but I was relentless and he finally agreed. I mean, he had no choice because I said I would do it behind his back if he didn't agree. Oh my God, Jenny, what's wrong with you? You had sex long before the wedding. You knew what the circumstances were before you walked down the aisle. Why? Why did you go through all this if you never believed he was good enough? You ruined his life, Jenny. I didn't plan this, you know. I'm not a cold-blooded bitch. I just heard the girls at work talking about it, and my fantasy got out of control. She was crying openly, and normally I would have been there, but all I felt was contempt. The guy I brought home made a big show of humiliating Peter, and I was completely consumed by it. I said terrible things. I felt like I had the right to insult his manhood. I loved it. I loved it more than I loved my husband, apparently, because even after it was all over and my lover left, I maintained my bitchiness. I continued to humiliate him for being weak. She couldn't speak anymore. That's when he disappeared, wasn't it? He didn't say a word to anyone. He left his friends, his job, his home, his whole life because of you, Jenny. I sat down and stared at her from the other side of the table. So why the hell did you try to ruin my marriage? Do you hate Leo that much? Do you hate me that much? I let the question hang in the air. She couldn't speak yet, but I wasn't in a hurry. I wasn't going to move until she gave me the truth. You guys were always so perfect. He was perfect. I think I was jealous of what you had. It reminded me that I screwed up with Peter. He was a good man, too. You ruined a man because of the way he was born, Jenny. He couldn't control it. People can lose weight, eat better, dress better, cut their hair. But not this. Women can have plastic surgery. But a man, he has to live with what he has. How could you destroy someone for something he had no influence over, Jenny? He was good to you. You said so yourself. The anger left my body, but it didn't change my attitude towards Jenny. I wish I had listened to Leo's warning. I turned my back on poor Peter and forced Leo to play this game when he needed friends the most. I confided in her, and she used this personal information to try to destroy my marriage. Leo's humiliation was even heavier on my heart. It may have come from Jenny's mouth, but it was my own stupidity. I think it's time for you to leave, Jenny. She looked at me. I saw pleading in her eyes. Go away, and never come back, Jenny. You and we're done. I never want to see your lying face again. If you ever tell anyone about my personal life, I will do everything possible to destroy you. I will tell everyone how you played with Peter and ruined him for your own pleasure. I saw her eyes widen at my threat. I'm going upstairs to figure out how to find and fix everything with Leo, and when I come down, I want you out of my house and out of my life. Forever. I vaguely heard the sound of a door closing while I was upstairs. Coming out with Jenny was painful and draining, but it gave me a heightened sense of determination. I was going to find Leo and fix everything. If it takes my last breath, I'll do it. So you finally got in touch with her. That's a good step forward. How do you think it went? I looked at the psychologist. She came highly recommended by one of my colleagues. Fortunately, she was able to accept me almost immediately. The first meeting was not what I expected. I didn't really know what to expect, but I thought she would want to get into my emotions and dreams and everything. I was also wary because it was a woman. I knew she wasn't involved in my life, but the betrayal was so fresh that it was a factor. Fortunately, Rita turned out to be a pleasant surprise. She said almost nothing at the first meeting. She asked why I reached out to her and simply guided me with smiles, nods, and the occasional "please explain." At the first meeting, I laid out a lot of things. I refrained from overly humiliating details, but it didn't matter. I had a lot to say. The next time we met, she asked more specific questions, but not once did I feel like I was under a microscope or being judged. By the third meeting, she was encouraging me to consider contacting Diana. We listened to some of her voicemails together in her office. She refrained from commenting unless I asked. When I finally asked what she thought about my wife's behavior, her answer was quick and simple. Diana sounded like a woman in pain. This was the type of pain she couldn't shake, no matter what she tried to use to lessen its impact. She made it clear that her answer had nothing to do with what I should do next. It was an observation that I asked about. 2 weeks have passed since that terrible evening, and I finally plucked up the courage to call. I was afraid of what she would say and afraid that I would get angry again. It was normal, I guess. I mean, she apologized a lot and cried a lot. It was hard to talk through that. I answered, "Guilt and remorse are powerful emotions, Leo. It's right up there with anger." I nodded in agreement with her assessment. She wanted to meet me in person. My throat tightened. I see. How do you feel about this? I don't know. I'm afraid I'll get angry again or worse. Her eyebrows rose in interest. I'm afraid I'll give in to tears and forgive her. Does that bother you, Leo? Forgiveness, I looked down and nodded. True forgiveness is incredibly difficult. Many people say the words, but the heart does not reflect them. Unfortunately, over time, this discrepancy between the words and the heart grows until it becomes so significant that it deals a new blow to the relationship. What should I do, Rita? I begged her for guidance. I can't tell you that, Leo. It's a decision only you can make. She patted my forearm and leaned back in her chair. That's the point, Leo. For forgiveness to happen, communication needs to happen. If that's not possible, you need to be honest with her and consider next steps. Divorce, I muttered. That's one option, yes. Calling Diana at least stopped the daily barrage of texts and voicemails. She respected my wishes not to appear in the office, since I did not need everyone to know our affairs. I knew it was early. Or later I will have to talk to her. I just didn't know if I was ready for this. There was a light knock on my office door. Leo, there's a woman here who wants to see you. Is this my wife? I asked quickly. No, it's not Diana. She doesn't say her name. I don't think she'll leave, Leo. Is this someone handing me divorce papers? I didn't think Diana was at this stage, but was puzzled as to who it could be. I walked out into the reception area and saw Jenny standing at the counter. She met my gaze as I turned to leave. "Paula, if this woman doesn't leave, please call the police." "Leo, please, I'm only asking for 10 minutes of your time. Please." She ran up to me and grabbed my hand, which I quickly pulled away. "Don't touch me." I looked at the woman who destroyed my marriage. "Please, Leo, 10 minutes," she begged. I looked at Paula, who was ready to dial 911. I considered my options and finally turned to Paula, indicating that she could put the call on hold. "You have 5 minutes." I motioned her into my office and sat down at my desk. I deliberately turned on the timer on the computer. "Time has passed." "Thank you. Listen, Leo. Nice black eye. Too bad I didn't give it to you. Your wife hit hard." She smirked slightly. I sat and listened to her whole speech about apologies and how she would never talk about our intimate details again. She admitted that she was unhappy and took it out on me and my marriage, how she felt like an idiot, and all that. "Ever since Peter left, I've struggled with who I am." She started to wrap up. "He's fine, by the way. He got married last fall. He's having twins soon." Her face was priceless. Are you in contact with Peter?" Her surprise was genuine. "Since the day he left. I know I promised Diana I wouldn't do this, but something was nagging at me. So I found him, and we keep in touch." "So do you know why he left?" "No, not really. I know it had nothing to do with him cheating. I suspect it was the other way around, but he refuses to talk about it. Suffice it to say, he was humiliated beyond belief and needed a new life." I saw the thoughts swirling around in her head. We hadn't even mentioned his name in years, and now she was getting all the information about his life. "He is happy?" "Very. I met his wife recently. She's sweet and very beautiful." I could almost hear her heart breaking. "Please don't even ask where he lives or anything personal. I won't tell even if he's dying. In fact, those were his words when he asked me to promise. I'm just glad to hear he's doing well. Really, you'll have to excuse my doubt. You know, he never told me the details, but from what you and my wife tried to do to me, I can imagine the terrible things you did to him. You're one evil bitch, Jenny." She nodded her head slowly. "I deserve it, but you know who doesn't. Diana. There was no conspiracy between us, Leo. I'm sure you know that deep down. Her only mistake was trusting me. I'm the one who made it all happen. Perverted. Hell, I even tried to convince her that you were the perfect candidate." I tensed in the chair, and she raised her hands to calm me down. "You can see the result of my proposal." She gave me a clear view of her black eye. She stood up just as my timer went off. "I don't know where or when I became like this, Leo, but all I know is that it cost me a marriage to a wonderful guy and a friendship with a woman who was like a sister to me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry that I was such a bitch." She walked towards my office door and paused before opening it. "She loves you, you know. She'll never stop loving you. Of that I'm sure." She finally left my office. 1 month later. "So, Diana, how would you describe the trial period of living together?" "Well, I'm glad I get to see Leo every day." "Is that all? Any improvements in your intimate life?" "He's still scared. Ever since we tried the first time, and he couldn't. Oh, God." "Diana, it's okay to grieve. It's safe here." I stole all his confidence. "Be patient, Diana. You have always had confidence in your marriage. Until a few months ago, Leo was just as confident. His expectations have suffered greatly. Give him time." "I'll give him as much time as he wants, Doctor. I owe him this." "Have you discussed your reasons for sharing intimate details with your friend?" "To the point where I feel like a broken record. I know he heard me, but I can't help but feel like he doesn't believe me." "Do you believe in yourself?" Big sigh, Diana. "You have no idea how many times I've asked myself this question. I've tried the self-reflection techniques you suggested, and in the end, I still don't understand why I did it. I was never unhappy or angry with Leo. I was more than satisfied sexually, emotionally, etc. I keep coming back to Jenny's comment about wanting power, and it terrifies me to think that could be part of the reason. What kind of person am I, Rita? Human Diana. Power is the easiest thing to abuse. Having said that, healthy balance comes when you understand your tendency to use it unconsciously. It makes you better than most people. Month 2 inches. How are you feeling, Leo? That's a tough question, Rita. I guess so. Try to simplify it for me. I want to be with her, but I can't get what happened out of my head. It's like I'm waiting for another blow. She assures me there isn't one, and deep down I know it, but I can't let go. Why? The revelation of your deepest secrets is hard to accept. The fact that your life partner shared openly outside of your sacred safe zone, well, that makes things harder. It will take time, Leo. How long? Even I thought I'd leave this behind a long time ago. This is the millionth question. If answers like these were easy, we'd all be millionaires. You should do an open mic doc. Sorry, thought it was appropriate. Really, Rita, I'm afraid I'll never be able to get over this. I can't continue to keep her in limbo in good conscience. I know I love her, but it might not be enough. It might be over. You need to talk to her about your concerns, Leo. I don't think she sees the situation the same way you do. Month 3, couples session. Nice to see you both today. Tell me, Leo, how are you doing? Have you talked to Diana about your concerns since our last session? He did. We discussed a lot. He's been very honest and open with me, Rita. I understand how he feels and why he feels that way. But I think you could say he knows I'm not going anywhere. I think this is the first time I've seen you both smile at the same time. I know you've both worked hard on your relationship despite the stresses of work and life. Give yourself credit for that, but maybe it's time to take a break. I see that my comment bothers you. I don't mean a break in the sense of separation. I mean as a couple in therapy, you've laid a lot of groundwork, but now you should focus on being friends. Go to a movie, go to a concert, even just go for a walk and have a coffee. Put work aside and just spend time together. Month 4 inches. You look very relaxed today, Diana. May I assume you and Leo have had a good month? Your offer to restore our friendship could not have come at a better time. We agreed to remove all marriage obligations and simply spend time together as when we first met. And did it improve the situation at home? At home, in the office, I no longer feel a knot in my stomach when I walk home, and Leo said the same thing. And, so what, Diana? What were you going to say? We made love the other day. Oh my God, how did this happen? Honestly, I don't know. We went for a walk and stopped for ice cream. We were just walking around and talking about nothing important. As we started to walk up the driveway of our house, he whistled after me. When I turned around to jokingly ask about his motives, he pretended to be innocent and licked the ice cream, so I smeared it on his face and ran into the house. He chased me around the house until he caught me on the couch and started smearing ice cream all over my face. We fought and laughed until we were both exhausted. At that moment, we were just looking at each other, and he suddenly kissed me. The next thing I remember, we were making love on the couch. Earth is calling Diana. Where have you gone? You look lost in your thoughts. It was the most amazing feeling of my life, Rita. For the first time in months, I felt his desire for me. It all started violently and passionately, but then turned into a long session of love. You know, the one where you can look into the very soul of your partner and to understand, without a doubt, that you were exactly where you were supposed to be. It was a heavenly feeling. It looks like the real healing has begun, Diana. Remember, this is a process. There will be more bad days, but now you have a new foundation to build on. He may never be as open in the bedroom, only time will tell. Will it be for you? Problem. As long as we're together, I'm happy. So, what are your plans for the future? Well, we've started saving money for another trip. We're planning it for our 15th anniversary, but the dates are still flexible. We're going to visit an old friend next weekend. He and his wife recently had twins, and we've been gone for a while. So, I know that we are both looking forward to this meeting. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.